To the dark side, we have retirement.
All right, good evening, everybody. Want to welcome you all to this regular board meeting of the Perrysburg Board of Education on this Monday, July 15th, 2024. Mr. Dreyer, roll call, please.
Ms. Rowland Miller.
Here.
Ms. Larimer.
Here.
Ms. Minke. Dr. Reffert.
Here.
Mr. Bennington.
Here. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have the safety brief. So we have some guests here this evening, so we'll start with a safety briefing. Perrysburg Schools welcomes you to the Commodore Building, and we thank you for attending tonight's Board of Education meeting. We care about the safety of our students, staff, families, and guests. Please note that there are exits on both the east and west sides of the cafeteria. In case of an emergency, an AED is located just outside the cafeteria doors. You are located at 140 East Indiana Avenue. Thank you for joining us tonight and supporting Perrysburg Schools. We have a pretty busy agenda this evening, so can I have a motion to accept the agenda?
So moved.
Dr. Reffert?
Second.
Ms. Rowland Miller? Roll call.
Dr. Reffert.
Yes.
Ms. Rowland Miller.
Yes.
Ms. Larimer.
Question, when do we pull something before I vote for this? So do I say no or do I say yes?
What would you like to pull?
14-1, shoot, where am I now?
14-1 out of the consent agenda?
Yes.
So we will pull that out of the consent agenda. Does that change anybody's acceptance of this?
No, I know.
I'm a little out of order here, I apologize.
We can accept the agenda, and you can even pull it before we move on the
We'll do
consent
that then.
agenda. So
We'll do that then,
We're
Sue.
still good.
So we'll pull when we get to consent.
Okay. So, okay.
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 Mark me
Mis-
as
Mr.
a
Bennington.
yes.
Okay.
Yes. All right, the proposed agenda is passed in its current form. So what is great, we're in the July meeting. We've been out of classes for a couple of months, of quite a few weeks now, and we still have some recognitions to do, which is a great part of this job. So with that, Mr. Hosser, I will turn it over to you for introductions.
All right, thank you very much. So we are very excited to recognize some state qualifiers from this past spring athletic season at the junior high. So we have with us our junior high athletic director, Mrs. Andrea Monheim, who will introduce the coaches, say a few words about the program, and let the coaches talk a little bit about their athletes that are here. So, Ms. Monheim.
All right, well, first of all, thank you for inviting us and allowing us to be here to celebrate these athletes and these wonderful coaches, especially in this summer break. So we appreciate our audience that are here. Again, I'm Andrea Monheim, and this is my second year as the athletic director, so I'm excited to continue to be here, and hopefully you'll see me many more times. Two things I want to say before we bring up these coaches and these athletes that are well-deserving. First of all, in track and field for junior high, the qualifications have gotten very difficult. So it's a little bit different. So this is our first year with the tougher qualifications. So I wanted to let you know that the ones that you see here and the ones that are not here, that are not able to come, really had to go through a much stricter qualifications than they ever have in the past. So for example, just to give you an example, we had a seventh grade boy who in the long jump jumped 10 and a half feet and did not make the state meet. That would have qualified as second in the high school league meet, and he would have qualified for the district finals. So just to give you a clue, he's a seventh grader, so hopefully you'll see him next year. But just to let you know that these athletes are that good, that they would be doing just as well in the high school program. So just wanted to let you know that. We also, that was my first point. My second point is that the foundation last month, you guys had the high school state, and then in the winter you had the winter high school wrestlers, and then you also had the cross-country boys and girls team. And I want to let you know that I am a proud AD because we have fantastic coaches here, that just the foundation that they lay and how much fun and hard work that they make them do to get our athletes ready for high school is just phenomenal. So I'm really proud of all of our coaches. So we're going to start. Looks like we're going to start with our boys, and our head coach Matt Ferguson is here.
So again, thank you for recognizing our track and field athletes tonight. Just to kind of build off a little bit what Mrs. Monheim said, between our boys and girls teams, we had over 200 athletes out for track and field. So not only did these guys and girls have to rise above their peers and compete against their peers, they also had to compete in a very tough, expanded Northern Lakes League. All of them are individual league champs as well. So to get to the state meet, they had to be in the top 24 of their events, and that is no divisional breakdown at the junior high level. So it doesn't matter if you're competing against a big school, small school, you've got to be in the top 24 to even make it down to Columbus. So just making it there, as Mrs. Monheim said, is a big deal. So our first set of qualifiers was our 4x800 team, and they had a very solid year. Like I said, we're league champions. They went in as the 24th seed, and then ended up finishing 20th overall, including beating a team in the higher, faster heat. And this team was comprised of Connor Baisley, Braden Bostetter, Grayson Baltzell, and Lane Gazarek. And then every relay team needs a strong anchor. And our anchor in the 4x8 also qualified in the individual 800.
Coach, I just got to interrupt you just a second.
Like, are we
I assume these gentlemen are here in this row?
Yes,
You're
they
not
are
off the
here. They are
hook
here.
that
They are
easy,
here.
guys.
Sorry.
You got to stand up. You got to be recognized.
Come on up.
here.
So we got Connor Baisley, Braden Bostetter, Grayson Baltzell, and Lane Gazarek. Sorry, guys. Getting on a roll. So speaking of that anchor, like I said, every relay team needs a strong anchor, and our anchor qualified for the individual 800. He broke the school and league record on his way to state with a time of 2:06. He finished 5th overall in the state, earning podium honors, and that again is Lane Gazarek.
And while you're getting the picture, I just want to say I was at Rivercrest Park this morning walking, and this swarm of junior high boys passed me already getting ready for next year. So it was a swarm. Very
Pardon the
polite
pun.
swarm, I have to say. They said good morning to us.
Pardon the pun.
Look at those smiles.
I love it.
And next up, we will honor the girls with, we have head coach Sean Murray.
I like the shirts.
All right, I just wanted to start by kind of echoing what both Mrs. Monheim and Coach Ferguson said, just thanking Mr. Hostler and the board for inviting us here today. So at the beginning of each season, one of the first things I say to the team is, we have two main goals kind of by the end of the season, and that's the first one is to win NLLs, so to win our league meet, and then the second is to qualify as many athletes as we can for the state meet. And each year we've been very successful, this year included. So this season we had athletes qualify in the 4x800 relay, the 4x200 relay, the 4x100 relay, and then we also had an individual qualify in the 800-meter open race. So I'm going to go through and kind of introduce our athletes now. Many of them weren't able to be here tonight, but as for the girls who are here, as I say your name, just go ahead and come on up here. So first, the 4x800 team, we had Elena Cornwell, Lexi Schultz, Emma Rogie, and Charlotte Baxter. So this relay team, they ran a time of 10 minutes, 18.79 seconds. They went into the meet seated in 13th place, and they finished in 5th place, so they made the podium. And in terms of kind of place on the podium, this was a school record, so that was awesome. I also wanted to kind of give a special shout out to Julia Motzel. She was our alternate for the 4x800, and she continued to train kind of with the relay runners in that kind of gap between the league meet and the state meet, and she also drove herself all the way down to Hilliard just in case she was needed for the meet, so that was awesome. Lexi Schultz, who is here tonight, also competed in the Open 800 race, and she finished with the time of 2 minutes 27.24 seconds. And she went into the meet seated 12th, and she finished 7th, so she made the podium in that race as well.
Wow.
Next we have the 4x200 team, which was Estella Caputo, Ellie Pesky, London Longoria, and Marissa Cope. They ran a time of 1 minute 53.84 seconds, and they placed 15th in the state. And then Estella and Marissa also competed in the 4x100 meter relay, which also included then Charlotte Teskey and Alana Jackson. And they ran a time of 53.18 seconds, and they placed 16th in the state. And again, for the girls who are here, just thank you for taking time out of your summer to come get recognized.
Susan looks good against the backdrop. She's very color coordinated too. Oh, oh, there you go. So you got your black and gold nicely done. Yeah. But you got your.
Congratulations again, ladies. So to both teams, thank you so much for representing the Perrysburg schools and our community so very, very well. Thank you to the coaches for your guidance, for your support. And then if you've been here before, I always like to recognize parents, guardians, and grandparents, all those other people behind the scenes that get their children to the practices, support them when things aren't going so well, celebrate with them when things are going really well. You're an incredible part of this process too, and the board just wants to recognize your efforts and your support too. So one more time, congratulations to all of you. And I think with that, sadly, that is the recognition portion of the board meeting tonight. I don't know that we need the 5-minute break, so we'll hold that reserved for later.
Normally we would have a 5-minute break, and I would say something like, well, the students that we're recognizing at the board meeting tonight, they have a lot of homework, so we want them to get home early to do that, but I can't say that. But if you don't mind, this would be a good time if you want to leave, get some ice cream and celebrate your accomplishments.
Absolutely.
Now may be a very good time to do that. So thank you for being here this evening.
Thank
You're
you
more
very
than welcome
much.
to stay, so I don't want to.
Thank you for that, Mr. Hassler. I tend to try and get him to stay to hear Randy's report, but. All right, the next item on the agenda is public participation for agenda items only. We have no public participation for the evening, so we will continue to move through to item 6, the superintendent's report. Mr. Hassler, you have the floor.
All right, well, thank you. Okay, well, appreciate everybody being here, and it was great to see our students. Just wanted to note that in the picture, the last picture, we had the junior high student athlete, female student athletes being recognized. We did have 2 collegiate adults that were also in the photo. So Mrs. Monheim competed Division I track, as did our esteemed board member. So thanks. So very comfortable in that lineup, I noticed. So.
I'm at home with track people. And field.
So a couple things we wanted to highlight. So our teachers, school's out, but we just wanted to highlight a few things happening with our staff. Ethan Jessing is a STEM educator at Hall Prairie. You might have heard that he was one of 15 educators who was awarded the opportunity to be on a research vessel boat with 15 other educators. And they are doing what science teachers do on boats, studying microorganisms and algae blooms and all different kinds of things. So it's quite an honor to have one of our teachers selected to do that. Actually, it's the second teacher from that building to be selected to participate in this. So it's wonderful. The things that they're able to bring back to the classroom from these experiences is remarkable, and I think it inspires another generation of students. So we're grateful for that. Our child nutrition director, Mrs. Zilski, Denise, was awarded the Northwest Region School Facility Support Staff Award through OASBO. That's their professional organization, and it was great to see her recognized in such a wonderful way, recognizing her leadership in this area. So the updates that we get on our child nutrition food service department is always, I always learn something, and it's very eye-opening. And I think the passion that she has with what she does is remarkable, and it's infectious. So in a good way, not in a bad way. We're just talking about microorganisms, but I think it's something that is really exciting, and we're lucky that she's here.
And stay tuned, she's got some exciting stuff planned for the fall.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, the high school. Gonna have a, I'm not gonna give it away yet, but I'm excited.
So last school year, we had another STEM teacher at the junior high, Mrs. Durr, Miss Durr. They just had a T-shirt design contest and bringing community together, shine your light and positivity. So this also will be something that they're obviously selling the designs that the students created, the winners. And the proceeds will go to the HIP program, which is a high-impact peer program, which we've heard so much about. The school's foundation has made it a priority to help support that. So we're very excited about that. And I know she was here in the building last week working on this and getting things taken care of between Randy's office, my office, and so a busy time for many of our staff members. This is something that we recognized in some publications, but we received a grant from the EPA, $400,000 to go towards purchasing buses, propane buses. That's something that we've begun, and it continues to work that way for us in terms of getting more propane buses on the road. We still have maintained a certain level of diesel buses, but this is something that is to be celebrated. It was the largest portion of the grant, from my understanding, and we're set to expand this on what we're doing here. So we did get a couple of questions about, does this include grilling opportunities for kids while they're going to the class? No. So this is not like grilling or anything like that. So it's just to use for the motor. So some people had some fun with that. So it was nice. The clipboards opened up last school year, so only fitting as we kind of close up this school year that they and our students that are part of the band went to different communities, senior communities throughout the Northwest Ohio, and especially here in Perrysburg. And we're a huge crowd pleaser, so we're very excited about what they do here. So just reminding that priority as we talk about the budget, we talk about things for next school year. Lower the cost is always a priority, and high performance in everything that we do. So you can see here with the state report card, where we stack up, what our daily membership and enrollment is in terms of our attendance. Also, the pupils ratio towards administrators is well below the state average. Meaning that other districts have more administrators per pupil than we do. So that's something that is something we monitor. And being in that top 6% in state performance is important. State report card is just one tool. It's just one measurement. It doesn't define who we are and what we do. Thankfully, there are many other things that we continue to measure ourselves, and not only public schools but also private schools. So we want to maintain that, keeping our costs down below the state average and our performance well above. So we're continuing the listening tour with board members joining, and this will take place this Thursday from 4:30 to 6:30 out on the lawn here at the Commodore. So I know several board members will be in attendance. Mr. Dreyer and myself will be there, and just another opportunity to engage the community. The last one we had a month ago brought out a good variety of citizens who had different questions and dropped in for that. So it's a good use of time. So we're excited about that opportunity. So hopefully the weather will be cooperative and not too hot. So we'll do the best we can. Expiring levy and overviews. So I know the last special board meeting we had, the board made that decision. So just wanted to highlight kind of, well, what did we do at that last board meeting? So in 2019, we had a incremental levy that represents 17% of our budget that was expiring, and it went up in increments, 1.5 million per year. It expires this December 31st. And so the financial impact, it brings in about $13.5 million to our budget. So a loss of that funding would result in significant changes to what we do, including staffing. So the board selected an 8-year replacement for that levy as an incremental levy. So it's patterned after the 5-year levy. And it would increase $2 million a year to match that student growth, and also allow us that space. That was a big part of the conversations in the months and weeks leading up to that the board had, in terms of giving the district enough time to weigh, to consider other things that are happening and not have to continually be back before the voters to renew levies. And it also provides funds to adequately support our student growth. And I think that was something that was very important to that conversation, and that's new teachers and support staff, supplies and buses and desks and those kinds of things. The incremental levy sets a specific dollar amount each year, and then that the district will collect. And the amount needed to collect that, the millage rate, is then determined based on the valuation of that prior year. So every year that this goes up, there's a calculation that is done by the auditor's office, which will determine how much people will need to pay. And what works, very well with this incremental levy is the fact that as the community grows, new residents, new businesses, they pay their share, and everybody pays less as a result. And so when it went on the ballot, it was listed on the ballot based on what the current valuations would be for the next 5 years. And fortunately for the district grew. It added more houses, it added more businesses, the value of the community grew. So instead of going from 7.9 mils to 14.2 mils, which was on the ballot, it actually, which is 6.3 mils over 5 years, it ended up going from 2019 to 2024 from 7.8 mils to 9.75 mils, which is a 1.95% or mil increase, 1.95 mils. So that's the benefit of the incremental levy, is that it grows, it allows us to have the funds when we need it, but also it is reduced because of the growth in the community, and it captures that. There's a handful of districts that have that incremental levy, and they're growing districts, and this is the reason why. So instead of $220 per year on $100,000, which was projected if nothing changed in 2019, it actually ended up being $68 a year. Not a month, but a year per $100,000 of value. So that's one of the benefits. And this is the actual breakdown of how that worked. So you can see the ballot language in the second column from the left, and then what in the fourth column there from the left, what it actually was. So and so that's an important reminder. So again, 1.95 mils is what it actually grew. And here's another chart just to show where the ballot language said we would go, and actually how the ballot, the millage rate for homeowners, what it actually did. So generally speaking, when it comes to taxes, seeing a downward, slope there in that is very good. So this is structured the same way, except instead of 5 years, it is 8 years, and instead of 1.5 million, it is 2 million. But you can see how it's structured there. The debt millage for the high school is set to expire at the end of this year. So in 2025, it'll be the last year that those funds will be collected. And so when that comes off per $100,000 value, that's $5.39. That per 100,000 that will be retiring. So just to give folks kind of an understanding is, as we go on the ballot, there is dollars that are coming off in at the end of it retires on December 31st. And that's $5.39. So as we look at this millage that we're proposing, as that comes and hits the books, we know it'll be lower than what they're projecting today. And we know that it'll line up very nicely with this millage falling off. So that's something important for us to keep in mind. As we look at the uncertainty that we have, and that was one of the things that was discussed. In 2024, we have this ballot issue on the books. We know next year the permanent improvement levy expires. We know we have 3 board seats that will be up. The voucher lawsuit will go to trial. We don't know what the outcome of what that could be, but it could have an impact on our operations. And then in 2026, looking at, bond issues and the needs, we have the gubernatorial election, the biennium budget, new governor. All these things create a lot of uncertainty. 2027, 2 new board seats are up. 2028, the biennium budget. The biennium budget, as you know, dictates what we get every 2 years from the state in terms of school funding and what type of formula. And 2030, the permanent improvement will expire if that's renewed at 5 years. And you can see all the things that are happening in the next 8 years. And you don't know what those changes could mean to this district, either at the state level, the local level, or when it comes to asking voters for support. We don't know what to expect. But the one thing I would say for the next 8 years that we know what we can count on is the fact that we're going to continue to add students. So looking back to 2013 to 2023, this is what it looks like in terms of the number of students that Perrysburg, has realized. So it continues to be an important driver to why we need this. Why did we ask for what we did? This is a chart that I know that I've shown before, but I want to have a little bit different spin on this. So we're talking about an 8-year levy and what that uncertainty in the next 8 years, and what will the state do and what will happen here locally. And what we wanted to do is take a look at the last 8 years as kind of a reference point. So what's happened in the last 8 years? And this chart, again, for those that aren't aware, it is the first column is the year that the students were in kindergarten. So in 2011, we had 312 students in kindergarten. Those students just graduated this past May, and there were 400 students in that class. So they picked up 88 students over the last 13 years. So we've talked about how growth happens, and in that far right column, you can see how much we've added since that grade was in kindergarten. So in the so take a look at the last 8 years. So this 7th grade class, so 2016, 312 kindergartners. They're moving up into 8th grade. They're at 415. They've added 103 students to their grade level in the last 8 years, one grade level. So let's just take for a moment that kindergarten class, that 8th grade class, as they're getting ready to head up to 8th grade in the junior high, they've added 103 students. And then just take the current 4th grade class that has now moved up to, HPI, 63 students. We're talking about just 2 grade levels in the last 8 years have added 166 students. Just 2 grades. So this is something that, so on those 166 students, so how many additional teachers have we had to, just for those 2 grades over that time period? And then how many of those students are on an IEP and might need an additional, who need additional help? And we might need additional special ed teachers. As you know, they're very challenging to find. How many of those took up seats on buses? How many of them ended up, needing additional desks or chairs? So when we talk about moving forward in the future, in the next 8 years, and we know that we're growing and people understand that we're going to grow, you can begin to see what's happened in the last 8 years. So that additional money that we've gotten incrementally has gone a long way to cover some of those expenses. And that's really what is driving what we do and why we do it. So in the next slide, just to why an incremental levy, and we just talked about how it functions. But when you add up that column and all the new students that we've had from that 7th grade class on down, the last 8 classes, that number is 427. 427 in the last 8 years, just in kindergarten through 7th grade. We're not even talking, high school. So a couple things, if you take 427 and you say, okay, 23 students per grade, that comes out to about 18 and a half teachers. And then you say, okay, about 10% of our students are on an IEP, give or take a percent. So that's 46. How many new teachers would we need to make sure that we're within the state mandate and the right numbers? So let's say 4. So now all of a sudden we're talking about 22.5 teachers based on the numbers, not even of our entire population, but just in the last 8 years, starting at kindergarten and moving up. And when you take the average teacher salary, benefits, retirement, you multiply that by 22.5, that average comes out to $200,000 a year, just for teachers. That doesn't include the bus drivers or the aides that go with the students, or the desks or the laptops, or the trailers, or any of those other kinds of things. So we know, and that kind of takes us to the next slide, that this was just, last month, not even 4 weeks ago. That growth is going to continue to happen. So what do we do with, the funds that we have? And we know what they're going towards. And so when we talk about $500,000 additional from last year, it sounds like a lot of money. I understand that. But just K through 7, the last 8 years, $200,000 just for teachers. And that's where those dollars go. In addition to the seats on the buses and the actual buses, the propane buses that will not come with grilling things. But we understand where those dollars are there and where they're going towards. And we're very excited to have the opportunity to talk to the community about just that. So I think that's something that's important to us. We know the direct correlation exists between excellent schools and property values, and I think that's really important. The National Board of Realtors, this was a quote from some of the materials from a number of years ago that we've hung on to because it really captures it. No matter what their age or if they have children in school, this applies to every homeowner according to the National Board of Realtors. And there was an editorial in one of the local papers here, and it talks about here a quote For a small monthly increase of $8.40 a month property tax for a $200,000 home, Perrysburg schools can hobble along without budget cuts. We believe a majority of Perrysburg residents understand they cannot remain an upscale community if the school system is in a downward spiral. And one of the things that was really interesting, and I attended an event last week in Toledo with other area leaders, and people were talking about this sentiment right here, and it's a Perrysburg decision with a big ripple effect for all greater Toledo. What growth that exists in Northwest Ohio is in Wood County. The national website niche rates Perrysburg as the best place to buy a house in the Perrysburg area and calls it one of the best places to live in Ohio, rating the school system as high quality. So they were very interested in what was happening in Perrysburg because, Perrysburg is an economic engine that drives Northwest Ohio. And we saw the governor up here and other announcements, and we know that Perrysburg Schools is the motor that drives Perrysburg's community. And that applies to that economic development, concept. So for the students we serve, because at the end of the day, that's what we're talking about, we don't have to, in some cases with special education numbers, we do have to staff those at a level that is in compliance. But we don't have to do those. We don't have to add 23 teachers, 24 teachers like we were talking about. We don't have to do those things. But what ends up happening is it does impact the students that we serve. And I think that can't be lost in the conversation about, should we or shouldn't we? Because if you don't do that, then we know that there's going to be larger class sizes or programs and things that have benefited students that made us the kind of community the editorial described that will have to go away. That's what living within your means talks about. And what it gets lost sometimes is the fact that in the last 8 years, we've added just in grades K through 7, 427 students. How do you live within your means when you're adding 427 students? That's a new building. Most elementary schools are that size in the area. But that means no new staff, no new desk, chairs, all those kinds of things. And we know the state, the way that it's funded, the wealthier the community gets, the less state funding arrives here. And it forces us to be more reliant. So just kind of some thoughts, with being out in the community, talking to individuals, responding to emails, just some things I wanted to share, different perspectives that people are beginning to notice and pay attention, which is a great thing for us. So that's all I have.
Open up for any questions or comments.
I think what was really, as I looked through this, I mean, a lot of the things I've been hearing as I've been out in the community have been the appreciation of looking longer term, of the planning, of not coming back in a couple years to ask for more money again as if we didn't know we needed it. And so I think that growth, being able to plan is really important to what I'm hearing from people. And we know that it's impactful for the students, and it's impactful because we know it's important for the teachers, teacher recruitment and retention that we've also looked at, that we have that reliable funding stream. I think the most surprising thing to me of your presentation was the idea that the last incremental over those 5 years really only increased a third of what was projected. And that kind of surprised me and made me very happy that we kind of knew that the mills, but to put that in dollars, to understand that the growth really is picking up some of the heavy lifting on that. So I appreciated really seeing those numbers that, we approved. Yeah, thank you. That we approved far more than what was actually eventually collected due to growth. And I think that also then feeds into the timeline when you highlighted in slide, I think it's slide 15, where you talked about, back one maybe, where you talked about the high school levy rolling off. And again, we talk about assessed years, which I don't think most of us taxpayers pay much attention to. We pay attention to when our bill comes. And so just putting that together again, and I think this is to the concerns that were raised by Ms. Menke at the last meeting that I think are appropriate for us to pay attention to, of that there are many property owners in our community that have been hit pretty hard with inflation in the last 4 years that's developed with COVID and since COVID. And I like the idea of putting this together to understand with that, that there is no increase next year, that we collect the same, that the following year that this will offset actually the increase. And so that the increase really will not be felt until 2027 then. I mean, that is really hopeful for me, that I know that people are struggling right now, but my hope is in 3 years when there is this, I'm gonna say smaller increase, but it is important, that's real money for people, but that's not gonna hit for 3 more years. And so I appreciate that, and I think that addresses some of the concerns we have about inflation recently, and at least we're starting to get some of those signs that inflation is slowing down. So I appreciated really those slides. That was really helpful.
I guess I'll thank you for those comments. Wholeheartedly agree with everything you said there. And I'll, excuse me, a little frog in the throat. Thank this board. Somebody told me after our special meeting, someone whose opinion I value, said it's good to see this board wrestling with this decision. And I know how much each one of you wrestled with the different options and listening to the community and thinking through what you felt was best for the strategic future of this district, and then coming in and having the boldness to put the conversation on the table and have a very direct and spirited conversation at times to get us to this direction. I just want to congratulate and thank all of you for that work, and Mr. Hausler and Mr. Dreyer for the extra effort you both put in to get the information together that we needed to help to get to this decision. And we will be, I guess, let's call it finalizing it here later on in the agenda at 15.1, where we're going to vote on the resolution to proceed. With that, we'll move on. Any other comments, or we'll move on then to the treasurer's report. Mr. Dreyer, and you have some help in your presentation today, I understand.
Yeah, you're not stuck just with me tonight. I'm going to give a short kind of recap where we ended the year financially, and then I'll have Assistant Treasurer Kelly Wells come in and talk about the credit card program. So let's turn I changed things up a little bit. I want to start with this slide. When we looked at forecast, looking at scenarios, levy, we look at end of year cash balance, right? But we know that there's an ups and downs, and you can see the blue line. This is where we ended this year, in good shape. We're a little bit better than we expected, but it's always good news to have a nice higher starting point. So looking through where we ended fiscal year 24, revenue, we ended up at 126 cash days. Last year at this point we were at 88. So that's the difference. And again, 25 million is a big number, but I always like to remember that's less than 4 months, really. I mean, obviously, you're not going to. What's the chance of getting no revenue for 4 months? Well, it could happen. But it does give us some room. But we ended the year revenue up 9%, and I'm going to go through the drivers on this. And expenses were up 4%. So that's that is, I think, a success in and itself. All right, so I'm just going to kind of not go through quite line by line, but oops, I went too far. All right. Oops, my slide? Okay. So the first line, real estate taxes, I want to just acknowledge, obviously, that's our biggest driver and was up significantly and driven by 9.3%, about a third of that, a little bit more than a third of that was the incremental levy. So that was built in. And then the reappraisal was 2/3. So the increase was not just the reappraisal. And I know I'm a kind of broken record on this, but when we were forecasting in previous years, we knew that this year reappraisal, just by trends in the state, we were going to see. So it was baked into the pie, if you will. The next line set, I'm kind of pair them together. There's our two negatives in income: public utilities, private property, and our income tax. As I talked about, our PUP is down due to depreciation. It's so unless there's an investment in natural gas or electrical infrastructure, that's continue to be flat or drop. And then the income tax non-withholding, and that was a recovery from an increase in delinquency collections in previous years. So we expect that to level out, and we'll be back on more of a normal trend going forward. The next two items are state funding related, unrestricted state aid and restricted, and frankly, these increases are a function of the fair school funding formula. Obviously we want more funding from the state, but this shows us that it is working. And it's not fully implemented yet, and it's not fully funded yet, but for the first time, we are not on any kind of capped guarantee or anything like that. So we were funded for a percentage of every student that was counted. And of course, and the restricted state aid, that's some special education dollars, student wellness dollars that used to be outside the formula. It's now inside the formula. So the state funding formula had significant impact for us. And the last one I'll talk is other, and the downside of inflation is rising costs. The upside is higher interest earnings. And we certainly benefited from higher interest earnings this year, and interest rates are stable, but continue to be higher than they had in previous years. So that's kind of a recap on the income side. Oops. Let's look at the expense side. And our biggest area of savings is in salaries and benefits. There's no single driver there. It's a little bit here, a little bit there. Part of it is the attention HR does to, where we bring people in, on the salary schedule. What I tend to forecast is if a teacher retires, that we're replacing like for like. So our objective is if we have a teacher retire at, 30 years of master's plus 15, we're hiring a teacher with lesser, still high quality, but lesser experience for savings. And that's built in there. A few positions that don't get filled, a few less people taking family health insurance, all those things add up to the savings, and we came in on that. So there's not a single thing there, but that's one of those attention to detail that we just got to stay on top of. Purchase services and supplies, kind of an area where we have in some cases, some of our most control and some less, but special needs costs came in a little bit less this year. That's just driven 100% by the student needs, right? So as Mr. Hostler talked about, that we got compliance components, and sometimes we have students that have a little less severe needs, and that help us out. We've had good cost controls on the supply side. Our supplies came in very good, and then the lighting project is paying some dividends at this point. So all those things add up. It's not the same magnitude of dollars. It's like the copiers. In the grand scheme of things, our copiers and paper are not a big part of the budget, but it's the attitude of taking care of what we have that hopefully if you take care of the little things, you're going to take care of the big things. And there's a line item here that's new. I just wanted to point out, you see the debt service, $130,000. That's the lighting project. That was our first payment on that project. It's not just a lighting project. It's the HVAC for this building and the high school boilers and chillers. And what you'll see going forward and built into the budget is the general fund is essentially paying for the lighting project, because that's where we're seeing the electrical savings. And then the permanent improvement fund is paying for the high school boilers and chillers, and then the Commodore fund will pay for this building. So that project is being split kind of 30%, 35, 35 across those three funds. So the general fund is not taking the burden of it, but the general fund is getting the savings out of there. So,
Right, the general fund will see the benefit of
Yeah.
reduced utility costs.
Yeah.
Reduced energy costs.
and the last thing, and then I want to talk just a couple of minutes before I turn it over to Kelly to talk about credit cards, is talk about our severance fund. You see the $300,000 we've been transferring out over the last 3 years for our severance fund. The whole idea is to, over time, so the general fund is not seeing ups and downs. We got 2 teachers retire this year, 10 next year. 3, how do you plan for that? So you set up a separate fund that kind of takes those peaks and valleys. And I think Ms. Minke might have asked the question, what's the right level for that fund? And so I'm in the process of working out a sensitivity analysis and go, where does that need to be to cover the peaks and valleys, and is that $300,000 the right amount? At this point, I can say I don't think there's no need to go any higher, but maybe next spring we'll have a conversation about could it be a little bit lower, because we're doing well. It really all comes down to when do people start to retire. So I'm working out 5 or 6 years. Mr. Christie has helped me with, we know that who is going to be eligible for retire. People are not retiring when they're eligible, though, right? For the most part. Don would agree with that. So so the predictability on that. But we are talking about that. And so there's a sensitivity analysis that I will share with the board. We can have the conversation. Related to this, and again, outside the general fund, is our insurance reserve. Our insurance reserve is healthy, and the question has come up, is it healthy enough? Do we need to charge so much for premium, right? Because 85% of the premium is coming from taxpayer dollars. It's a good question. And that's not a question that I believe, or I hope we can answer on our own. So we've used an actuary, neutral party, all he's doing with the numbers, the claims rates, the trends, and then last fall gave us his opinion. We're in good shape, we're trending the right way, and we've hired him again to do that same analysis, but to do some more sensitivity analysis for us. Because are we healthy enough, for example, maybe we do not carry stop-loss insurance anymore, we cover ourselves. And stop-loss insurance, if you don't know, for a high claim, we pay portion of it, then the stop-loss carrier comes and pays the rest. So if we had $1 million claim, the district pays $170,000, the stop-loss carrier counts $830. Now the next year that gets lasered out, but that's another story. But there's some things like that we could do, but the point is we can report back and go, where do we need to be, on our premiums? And now, do I expect there to be tremendous amount of savings? No, but we can at least control the growth of health insurance costs by that approach. We're well below the national average on our increases in our premiums, and and you guys know, you've heard, the reasons why. The We Care Clinic is part of it. It's somewhat luck, right? We could have a family have preemie twins, and that could blow us out of the water. All those kind of things could happen, but that's why you have an actuary help us with the risk assessment on it. Then we have a conversation, how much risk are we willing to take? So typically actuaries are brought in when an insurance plan's in trouble. We're trying to be proactive and protect the district, and risk, pretty risk adverse, but at some point in time, belts and suspenders and another set of belts, is that enough? And we can back off a little bit and take some calculated risk. So we're working on those kinds of things, just so you know. It's outside of general fund, but obviously it impacts general fund because general fund money are feeding those sources. So hopefully that makes sense. Last thing, not much to add here, but just I've already covered these. So, financially we had a good year. I think educationally we had a good year, and it's a win-win. We know there's some waves ahead, and I'm pleased with the response we've gotten from, the team to take this stuff seriously. So, any questions on that part? Okay, so Kelly, when you can come on down, when she comes down, let me do an introduction. Kelly Wells, come on down. Now, so just so you know, and you probably may already know this, within the Ohio Revised Code, school districts are allowed to use credit cards for our payment process. Now, there are, depending on how you use credit cards, dictate certain compliance aspects. For example, if in smaller districts, and this is a standard procedure, all the credit cards sit in the treasurer's office, they're locked up and they're signed out. There's a different set of best practices and rules for that process. We don't have that situation. We have a situation where some of our credit cards are signed out, if you will, permanently, or at least they're not locked into my office. So therefore, we have another set of rules, and we have to have what is called a compliance officer that cannot be the treasurer. Because ultimately, I'm still responsible for the credit cards. The compliance officer is making sure just that we are in compliance with those. And so Kelly has that fine job to do that. And we've talked about this before, but the number of transactions we have, the greatest risk are with paper checks. And in fact, we just got an AOS bulletin, Auditor State Bulletin today about what is happening with paper checks. They're being stolen out of mailboxes. These thieves are becoming very sophisticated and being able to alter them, alter the amount, alter the payee, all those kinds of things. Now, we do have some things in place to protect us on that side of it. We're not going to get into tonight. That is our last choice of payment. We don't like to use paper checks because of fraud. And it's also the most expensive thing. It takes the most labor as well as other resources to do. Our favorite way, if it's cost-free, is credit cards because we get rebates on our credit cards. So we like to use them if it's free. More and more vendors obviously charge, as you all know, if you use your personal credit card, more and more people have a cash fee, cash zero free, use your credit card, they charge in 3%. So if there's no charge, we'll use our credit cards. And I want to emphasize here, when we say credit cards, we don't carry any balance. Every month the balances are paid off. So there's not really, they're more like charge cards, but they're credit cards. And we've got some store cards and then cards through Huntington. And then the third way is electronic. And that's our preferred way. It's safer. It's not 100% safe, as West Claremont schools found out. They lost $1.2 million that got hijacked and processed. So we've got things in place. But importantly, the credit cards are high risk because guess what? They're not always under our direct control. So we have Kelly Wells. It's all yours.
Mr. Hostler and Board of Education, thank you for having me this evening. I'd like to start with going over for an outline, the introduction, the type of cards, and at the end we'll take questions and comments. I became the credit card compliance officer in November of 2020. This district had 27 credit cards, physical ones at the time. So I decided to hold a meeting with the bank rep and make a plan. So all the information has been updated for the district on the credit cards, and my cell phone is now tied to a 24/7 hotline for any fraud alerts or anything that might go awry for the district. All physical cards that are not currently checked out or on a person, they are stored in the safe in the finance office. Today we're down to 17 physical credit cards. 6 of them are actually permanently signed out to specific employees. I've made each individual credit card have their individual credit card limit. It's important that we monitor and keep balances and limits as low and worthy as needed. The credit card names have been updated prior to me coming here. There were some issued in personal names. We've got everything under the district names now so that it's more compliant. And we require now a 24 to 48 hour return on any physical credit card that's checked out under, concessions. If there's someone that's going out of town for personal or, professional development, we'll allow the stay for 3-4 days, whatever the trip may take. So that's on the 11 that are remaining, that are able to be checked out, the physical cards. There is a process to receive a physical card. First and foremost, you must have an approved purchase order in place for the funds to be expended. They can be requested via email, in person. An email could come through SEView, or someone could call the finance department. All of us have access to the safe and to the log if somebody would like to check out a credit card. And they can also be made to be checked out in advance. You can request a card in advance. And we keep all this information when a credit card is checked out, used, touched, on a Google shared doc in the finance department. We all have access, and that we can track where each card is at all times, who the person is, right down to the purchase order number, the date, transactions, dollar amounts. We track all of that. And then when the card is returned, we also log the date and who checked the card in to put it back in the safe. We also offer virtual credit cards. It's called an RCN. It stands for a real credit card number. It expires the last date of the month after it's issued. It's a safer mechanism for security purposes. There's a transaction control. We can set the limit. We have a limit. We don't allow a virtual credit card to be assigned to have possibly 5 or 6 transactions put on one. We limit it to 3 so that there's more control. We can limit the dollar amount. We ask for specific dollar amounts on these so that there's more control over the virtual cards that go out. And a virtual credit card can immediately be blocked and turned off at any given time if there would arise an issue. That it is the safest credit card practice. We track and log them the same as physical credit cards. Same way, same process, how to request one. They're actually created through our bank. And there's 3 of us to always make sure that someone's available in the department to be able to issue a virtual credit card. And they're used just the same as a physical credit card. This is an example of one that's been created through our bank. We go in, we create it. It's issued to the person of the request. There is a control of dollar amount transaction control. The purchase order number is tied to the virtual card itself. All of this information is tracked the same as a physical credit card in the process for checking in, checking out, etc. We have a credit card rebate program through accounts payable. When they go to pay our vendors online, if they can accept a credit card, we prefer that method. And by using and utilizing that process for the credit cards, whether it be through a virtual one that the vendor would accept through the process through accounts payable, we earn rebate interest earnings back on those purchases, or excuse me, payments on the purchases. And that's usually about 1.1, 1.2%. At the end of June, we were just over $12,000 in rebates from paying things through accounts payable with the credit card versus paper checks. Do any of you have any questions?
So I probably have one, but we talked about this in finance.
That's okay.
So one thing we didn't talk about, so the former auditor and me, which was many, many, many moons ago,
Yes, sir.
really appreciates this process and your use of purchase orders and the approval process, the limited number of cards that are available, the small population, the use of virtual cards, all to me just seems best in class. And I don't like to use that language often, right? Because you don't know what happens tomorrow. But let me ask you this: over the last, we've been compliance officer for 4 years.
Yes, sir.
How many issues, how much unauthorized use of credit cards has occurred during that time period?
There was an issue when I first started here, and that's why I jumped on the situation to implement a more safe and secure process for the district and for the credit cards. With my fraud alert implementation that I have on the cards now, very, very far and few between. However, just when I thought we hadn't had any alerts for a very long time, as we spoke at finance, I did have my phone go off at 8:13 p.m. on Friday, and I made the necessary phone call at 8:17. The situation was rectified before 9 p.m. It's just a mechanism that Huntington and I implemented so that, hey, if there's a charge out there that is in question, let's verify it.
Yeah, and I should have been more precise in my question, how many, unverified things get caught later on. You've got so many processes in place that, there's a lot of fences up on this. So I congratulate you on the process.
Thank you.
And that's
Yep.
a good point. I think, as Kelly pointed out, there's not been any fraud issues.
Right.
There has been some flags raised, but rightly so, just like we do on the other side with warrant checks and ACHs. There's a mechanism to raise those kinds of flags too. We get those occasionally, but the key is there's nothing fraudulent.
Yeah, a flag is not an issue. A flag is a question. Yeah.
Correct it. Yep.
Yep.
There's good due diligence just to make sure that we're verifying that everything is legitimate through the process that we've implemented. And it's all been good. Better safe than sorry.
And as we point out in finance, we've had more, and not many, but we've had more issue with counterfeit currency
Yeah.
than with this kind of stuff.
Fake $50 bills, that sort of thing.
Well, yeah, we only take 20s now,
Okay,
by the
fake
way.
20s, but yeah.
But they were $20 bills, and the bank caught them, and they were really good counterfeits. is what
They
we-
were. Randy sent myself and Tanya through accounts receivable over to the bank to actually see and feel the money. The bank, it almost got past the bank. It was pretty amazing. But we rectified the situation, made sure that we have the counterfeit counting check pens put in place for all the buildings. Anybody that's handling cash, limited it to $20 bills, and implemented a process right away.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on. So we also have, so item 7.3, I'm looking for a motion to approve the June 2024 financials.
Mr. President, I have, if you want, 7.3 and 7.4 grouped together in 7.5.
Oh, moving to, okay, thank you.
If
So
the
if
board
you would
prefer
walk
to
us
do it
through.
separately, you obviously have that right.
No, I missed, I didn't jump ahead to 7.5 there. So can you walk us through 7.4 then?
Okay, well, you already hit 7.4 is updated temporary appropriations. So back in June, you did an initial appropriation so we could spend money on July 1st, but that did not include grants and some other funds. This temporary appropriation included some things that had not been budgeted yet, and there are a few other things out there, primarily student activity funds, that have not been budgeted. So we'll probably have to do one, when we do our permanent appropriations, or I don't know why you call it permanent, because you're allowed to update them every month. But it's just it's an update, and sometimes we get some grant allocation updates and stuff like that we have to reappropriate. And as you know, we cannot spend, even if we have the money, we can't spend it unless the board says we can.
Okay, thank you. Okay, with that, sorry, now we will move on to item 7.5, which is approving agenda items 7.3, the June report, and 7.4, the temporary appropriations.
So move.
Second.
Ms. Menke and Ms. Larimer. Roll call, please.
Ms. Minke,
Yes.
Ms. Larimer,
Yes.
Ms. Rowland Miller,
Yes.
Dr. Reffert,
Yes.
Mr. Bennington.
Yes. Finance items are approved. Item 8, board committees, topics for discussion. July is typically a pretty slow month committee-wise, so looks like the only committee that was held was finance, which I think I have nothing to add. Ms. Menke?
No. I do. Kelly, I really appreciate your presentation that you did at Finance and tonight, and it really helps clarify exactly all of our checks and balances that we have going on within the district.
Yeah, and it's quite annoying. I can't even get a credit card without having a purchase order.
That is one of the best things I've heard all night.
Yeah, rank doesn't have its privilege, apparently.
Outstanding, nor should it. Very good. Good for you, Kelly. Good for you. All right. If we're good to keep moving, okay, we're going to move into the consent agenda. So the consent agenda is going to cover items 9.1 with a revision. We are going to pull out item 14.1, the proposed updates to the Perrysburg School Student and Family Handbook. Is that correct, Ms. Larimer?
Yes.
For separate discussion and
I
vote?
left all my notes sitting on my desk. Yeah, 14, yes.
So we're going to move that out, and we're going to move that into other items for consideration, non-consent. And I guess we will just for simplicity call that 15.3. So the consent agenda will now cover items, what did I just say, 9? Through revised 14.6.
I wanted to make a correction on 12.5.
Let me get there.
It says substitute teachers. How about substitute classified?
12.5, classified substitutes.
It should be substitute classified.
Okay.
Okay. That was just seeing if you were paying attention.
Got it. Okay, can I have, so with those revisions, can I have a motion to accept the revised consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Roland Miller and Dr. Ruffert? Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Roland Miller,
Yes.
Dr. Reffert,
Yes.
Ms. Minke,
Yes.
Ms. Larimer,
Yes.
Mr. Bennington.
Yes, consent agenda is approved. We're going to move on then to item 15, other non-consent agenda items. First item is 15.1, the resolution to proceed on the $13.5 million fixed sum incremental levy with an annual incremental increase of $2 million for a term of 8 years as presented. Can I have a motion to accept that?
So moved.
Ms. Roland Miller?
A second.
Ms. Larimer? Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Roland Miller,
Yes.
Ms. Larimer,
Yes.
Ms. Minke,
Yes.
Dr. Reffert,
Yes.
Mr. Bennington.
Yes, resolution to proceed is approved. Next item, section 15.2, pulling out a substitute teacher for a separate vote.
I kept looking for her name.
I wonder why.
Can I have a motion on this substitute teacher vote?
So moved.
Dr. Reffert, Ms. Larimer? Roll call, please.
Dr. Reffert,
Yes.
Ms. Larimer,
Yes.
Ms. Minke,
Yes.
Ms. Roland Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Bennington.
Abstain. I'm surprised none of you noticed there was no discussion on that one.
I thought you might fight that for a second.
These are recorded, easy. Okay, so then that now takes us to new item 15.3, which for reference is 14.1. Other items for consideration consent agenda. I think first I'm going to need a motion.
So moved.
Thank you. And a second?
Second?
Yep, Ms. Larimer, thank you. And now discussion. So,
Okay, there
Sue, I'm
is-
going to turn it over to you since you were the one that did send an email
I
earlier
know,
asking
I
to pull it out. I'm sorry, we missed that.
So this whole thing kind of confused me, and Mr. Hausler explained a little bit in a quick text before the meeting. I noticed that this section here was really different than the actual policy, and so I was kind of confused. And he was explaining that it's taking the policy.
Sue, can you clarify which section or the whole thing?
Nope, sorry, use of personal communication devices,
Okay.
I apologize.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's the one that got me all hyperventilated, because I'm really struggling with this. So I read the policy, which the link is included down there on the agenda, and I did have that pulled up at one point in time, and now I don't, so my bad. I guess I'm gonna blame maybe the Pupil Services Committee on their education of me and what I've learned over the years of being on that committee, and the importance of valuing our students' mental health, our students' just, I don't want to say esteem, but just their social skills. And I'm coming from the difference that I saw where I taught at my last teaching assignment, and the stress on 0 electronics, and the difference that I saw between students there and what they were able to do, how they communicated with one another. I mean, it was such a big, purposeful thing. And I have to talk directly to you. I'm going to have a conversation with you. And you know, I'm not going to sit here and text you. It wasn't that long ago that a friend of mine sent me a picture of his family all finally together in one room, and he says, look, they're all here together. And I texted him back and I said, look, none of them are looking at each other, they're all looking at their devices, even the 2nd grader. And he was horrified. And I said, put them all away. Make them put them in their shoes, put them in their pants. I don't care what you do, but get them out of there. And he did. And they had a wonderful evening. So what I'm seeing is that in our policy, which once again, we are the trailblazers, we're way ahead of the state mandate on this, we have a policy that I don't think goes far enough. And I would like to see, especially our high school students who are getting ready to go out in the world, go out into the business world, and isn't this something that we heard on the Business Advisory Committee, that they want students who can communicate with one another, communicate with people that they know, that they don't know, that they can be respectful to people of authority over them, people younger than them. And when you go to a store, and most of these are kids that, well, now, a lot younger than I am, but most of them are kids, they have no communication skills. They can't say hello to you. They don't know how to address a question. If you ask them a question with more than 2 thoughts in it, they look like they're confused. And I'm saying, whoa, and now we've got AI. And I see things that are taking their ability to think and process away. And there's so much research coming out that is saying that this growing dependence of kids, and I'll say, what, maybe our 40s and under, maybe not 40s, maybe 30s and under especially, have become so dependent on their phones for every little thing. And I'm not saying that the phones are an inappropriate tool. They're a tool. And we've lost sight of the fact that they're a tool. Kids rely on them. They depend on them. They depend on them for their social interaction. They depend on them for every little Tom, Dick, and Harry thing that runs through their mind. And I don't think this is healthy. And there's so much information coming out. And I don't know if y'all heard about this. And you're not going to find me praising many things that happen in California, especially Los Angeles, but the Los Angeles Unified School District, which is one of the largest school districts, or the largest? No, New York is larger, isn't it? In the United States, just passed, June 18th, a resolution to create a truly phone-free school day across the district. And I thought about that. I really apologize that I left my papers on my desk because I had all my notes written on it. I guess that this falls into policy, and for policy to look at, and I guess I'm having a knee-jerk reaction since I'm not on policy now. But I think it's something for our students, we would do a benefit to them by saying, no, when you're in school, during school hours, unless your teacher says, I need you to get your phones out because we're going to use them to do research or something like that, using it as a tool, I just think it's something that really needs to be considered for the sanity of our students. When you see them at lunchtime and they're all sitting here like this, when that's their time to relax and be kids and talk with one another and figure out, hey, what are we doing this weekend? What are you doing tonight? You going to that movie? Oh, that movie stinks. Don't go to see that movie. None of that stuff. You can't type that fast. And, well, I can on my on my computer, but I can't on a phone. I mean, it seems like when our precious students are in our care, it's an area that we could help them in getting some mental downtime. Our kids are under so much pressure. I think in any school district, but in our school district, that there's so much success in our district, there's so much going on in our district, there's so many things for them to do. They need some downtime, and that's what lunch is all about. And I read somewhere that there's even a school district, I forget where I saw this, that for a minute during every lunch period, it's silence. And I thought, that's brilliant. Just stop, slow down, close your eyes. If you want to take the pose, take the pose. But our kids need this. When do they get a time to turn off? We always say that for us. We're worried about our teachers, we're worried about our staff. I think we need to spend some time worrying about our students and giving them time to slow down, take a breath. They've got their lunch, they've got their morning, they've got their lunch, and then give them some mental rest and then time to go on to the rest of their day. The problem that I saw on the flip side of that is, I mean, that's how some of us grew up on this board. Maybe not everybody, but some of us, we didn't have phones in school. So if your parent needed to get a hold of you, you called the school, you left a message with the secretary. The little student that's working in the office would take the little slip of paper, find out where you're at, and then go and take you and give you the note. If we're doing that for a student population of 5,000, how many secretaries did I just make mad? And so I don't want to cause that problem, but I think for the mental sanctity of our students and the emotional stress that they are under all the time to perform and to perform well, they're not going to die if they don't have a phone during school day. And I think some of these kids actually wither inside when they don't have that. And I think that's sad. And like I say, with AI, that's just another way that they can not think about something. Oh, how do I write this paper? AI, you do it. No. AI, I want to take this, this, and this, make me a chart and compare all these things. That's the way you use AI. Not to write my paper, but to do a tool to make your paper better. So and Susan and I saw a great demonstration of that at BLI, and then I saw another one at the Trends for Education that was absolutely mind-blowing. And so, yeah, I probably will be, maybe I'm old enough that I can put my heels in and not learn about AI. I don't know, but I know that that's something that's really going to hit us. And it's just going to be one more thing to put more pressure on our kids. So that's why I wanted this pulled out, because even though this is taking, and I think you, explained it really well, that it's taking policy language and making it human language, so that it's more understandable. I just don't think it goes far enough, and I would like to throw that at our policy committee to review that before the deadline of June 25, and see what if that isn't something that can be done.
So I'm going to jump, let me turn that on.
I appreciate that, especially as a English teacher. And if you do the research, you can show that the use of cell phones has diminished our youngest kiddos and their language skills. But I also don't want our administrators to have to become the electronic device police. So while I think it's imperative that, yes, we do review the policy, but I also think that we need to have our administrators involved, because as a former high school administrator, pre-cell phone like this, all you would be doing, put your phone away, let me take your phone, that's all you're doing. And so I think there has to be a lot of involvement too from parents and buy-in. I mean, I'm gonna be the first one to admit, as a school administrator, I told my son, keep that phone in your pocket, because if it hits the fan, you run out of the building, you call your mom, and I'll deal with the consequences later. So I think there's a lot of that, and I think it has to be a lot of discussion as the understanding of why and how do we curb that. And I don't think it's just us putting something on paper. I think it's going to involve a lot of community involvement.
Yeah.
Because it's so easy. And if you see some of the research, all right, kids, get out your phone. Let's keep track of how many times your phone dinged for Instagram, for Snapchat, for this text, for your mom calling, for your mom, somebody texting in school, and it's nonstop. So I think it's going to be a bigger discussion than what we can handle here. But I appreciate the fact that that is something that we need to address, and not just, here, this is what we're going to do, now let's everybody follow it, because it's going to be, what happens when people tell people that's what they have to do without any input.
It'll be interesting to watch and see what happens in a district like LA,
Right.
and what unintended consequences comes of it. And that's what you want to avoid when you make policy of any sort, is unintended consequences. But gosh, I think the goal is lofty. How we get to it is where the discussion needs to be.
I think it's the second sentence in the policy that's before us that's the challenge, and following, all the things that have come out from the state and enough things that were in the culture. I ended up reading in the last month that Anxious Generation book, and I wanted to go drive to each of my kids' house and take their phone away, but they're adults, and I can't do that anymore. But I'm also very aware of the potential impact, even though we waited till high school to give our children phones. I know that what I was reading about was part of their lives. And so I am very committed to reviewing cell phone use. I think the education of the community and parents is crucial in that. I would love if every single parent in our district read The Anxious Generation, because that would be an interesting conversation to have, or maybe we wouldn't need the conversation. But it is, that second sentence is one that I'm looking at. But I do think it's not just a policy question, but it is certainly we as the board set policy that needs to, impact procedures, but there is a bigger cultural shift and a lot of education and conversation that would need to happen for that to be successful, I think.
So when you say the second sentence, are you talking about high school students are permitted?
Yeah, because right now that's really the one place in particular they're allowed outside of a locker during school time. I mean, what happens if parents have purchased cell phones for their children after, 3:30 or whatever the time the school day ends. But I do think we need to look at not just the interruptions and how that's impacting education, but the overall wellness of students and as they experience life in the schools during that time period.
Yeah, I can certainly get on board. All of your points, everyone's points are really well taken here. Mental health of our students in this increasingly age of information does cause a lot more stress than it did, but also from my seat. In the business community, you know, the differentiators in the future are going to be those that use technology. AI is not going to replace people, but it could replace people that don't know how to use it. You know, that little anecdote is to say, ignoring it for our students too doesn't feel today like the right answer either. So I am certainly in favor of policy committee, probably starting the conversation with the administration to figure out what is the right information, who are the right stakeholders to talk to about this, the right, you know, looking at the unintended consequences. I think teachers have a voice in this, or, you know, what their desires are, and the rest of the community. So yeah, I think it's a good point to raise.
Okay.
And I am encouraged to hear that we are ahead, your own words, Ms. Larimer, that we are ahead of the state mandate, which of course we are.
Of course we are.
And when you said stakeholders, I would like to see if there is a like a student voice as well, because we're asking them to do something.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's
Well,
not
it's
going to
just
be that success.
compliance.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think
Oh,
having, you know,
they're
I
not
know
gonna
there
be
are
happy
people
about it.
too, you know, and that's the law and why we have to do it and why we're doing it.
Yeah, I think great conversation, and you know, you put your parent hat on, and it's hard to disagree with that. You put your educator hat on, and there's certainly, you've seen changes in students and how these phones have driven many aspects of what goes on during the school day. And as administrator, the friction that's caused by phones and what that brings to, you know, social media into the buildings. I think just a quick review, right now in grades K through 8, students are not permitted to have their phones out. They cannot use them during the day. So right now there are no phones permitted in you know, to be visible in grades K through 8. So they're if they have them on them, like we heard, it's you know, in their locker, in their backpack, in their locker. They're not supposed to have them on them. You know, if kids are carrying them, they're certainly doing it in a way to conceal it from staff. At the high school level, you do have the ability to check in between classes, or you know, at the lunchroom, have your device out. So as we, you know, get into what do we want to change, I think it's important to hear, well, what is it that we're doing? So where does that leave us in terms of changing? I know we've had some preliminary conversations about, you know, it's there. Not that anybody remembers, but we had the conversation, or it wasn't a conversation, I was giving a speech at graduation about cell phones and smartphones, and how the devices were to communicate. So if mom or dad wants to get a hold of you, they can make a phone call and they can reach you. But what you know, what the phones do today, the smartphones, is it brings the world to the palm, literally, of an 8-year-old. And that's where a lot of these problems are created. So part of the conversation could be, you know, we understand and respect the parents' rights in today's generation to be able to reach out and connect with their child. But it doesn't have to be on a smartphone that has the internet and has apps and all the kinds of things that brings anxiety. It could be another type of phone or another type of device where you can make that phone call for mom or dad to come get you, or another family member. So I think as we start to frame this conversation, it's, you know, understanding where we are. So I don't want to give the impression that right now 8-year-olds can walk around their building on their cell phones. That's not the case. Their phones will be taken away if that does happen. But you know, at the high school level, they're there. I know that our principal and teachers, the building leaders got together and talked about bringing more consistency across the building, where now the plans are when students enter a classroom, they give up their cell phones, put them in a slot that teachers will have, and bringing continuity to, you know, the 120 classrooms that are in play on any given day. It used to be, well, Mrs. So-and-so or Mr. So-and-so, you know, if we're done with our work and it's 5 minutes before the bell, we can take our phones out. You know, and the message last year was, no, we're going to be united with this. So I think we're taking some steps that you'll see some of those things hopefully start to trickle in, but certainly in between classes, and I think we just have to talk about how do we want to frame that and tackle that issue. And you know, we had meetings this summer with about this issue with our elementary principals, because my thought was, when do children start to get devices to communicate at home? Because I thought it was about 5th grade. And what I heard was a little bit sad, and I'm not judging parents, because every one of my 4 children got their phone earlier and earlier, so I'm not casting stones. But when I heard that, you know, usually 4th grade, they have a device. If we could get to parents before they're making that decision to make that purchase, I thought that'd be a critical time to maybe have the school step in. One of the parents that was honoring their child earlier was the Perrysburg Township Police Chief. He and I had a conversation about this, and how from the law enforcement side, other entities are seeing just the mental health that was mentioned by Ms. Larimer, the need to rein these in, to really understand the impact. And Ms. Susan Roan Miller, Mrs. Roan Miller, we've talked about the book and the data, and it's startling. And so the idea that we need to do something is definitely there. How do we do it in a way that gets parents behind it and gets the community behind it, and do it in a thoughtful way? You know, that's really important. So I think, you know, this is
And if I've
timely,
learned,
for sure.
if I've learned nothing of being on the board, it's that anytime I've come up with an idea, there are a whole lot of dominoes behind it. And I'm finally learning that, and it dawned on me as I was taking my notes, and I said, oh, okay, I'm gonna make a lot of secretaries mad, and then the dominoes started to fall in my mind, and I'm thinking, okay, there's gotta be a way that we can help take care of our students in this arena and manage all those dominoes. And you're very good at that, by the way.
Well, no.
It sounds like we're aligned on the first steps in a direction, so.
Okay.
I would like to make a comment. Eric, I do agree with you that I do believe that it is very important that we include the electronic devices for AI reasons, education reasons, you know, the wave of the future and how this is going to be used in the workplace. With some of the things that I've done in the past, and especially with Perrysburg, since it is a very up-and-coming area with a lot of professionals coming in, and especially international professionals. I have experienced kids who are ESL kids, are English Second Language learners, that use it in the classroom, especially initially, just to get by. And it becomes an important device for them to have along with their teachers. I do think it is a work in progress with our teachers that, and especially with our kids, that we need to stress the discipline of having these electronic devices, self-control, and communicate with them to the perils of misuse or overuse of it. I mean, I just see this as a small computer, but I know teenagers look at this as an entertainment device. But to me, I mean, if I lost this, I couldn't get a hold of half of everybody, and the information that I need to just function and work every day, it's lost, and it's very important. And this can be a research device for our children and other functions that they use in the classroom, but at the same time, like I said, the discipline not to use it for entertainment.
The appropriate use is the words you said there that I grabbed onto. Yeah.
But they have their laptops, and that's where they can do research and have, for the TESOL kids, they can have their translators and things like that on there. So it's not like I'm saying get rid of all of their electronic devices. I'm just saying the phone is something that steals away their ability more easily to hone human social skills, which was one of the things that was so desperately hurt during the mandates during COVID. And I think maybe that's where a lot of this came from. They saw some of the damage from that, and now they're starting to tie it to other things. I don't know. Like I say, I didn't come with a whole report. I just looked up this thing because I had heard about it from LA and kind of drove home the point. It would be interesting to actually almost do a report, like research on it, on the studies of it. And I don't know, if you want me to do that, I can certainly do that and go down that rabbit hole, but you got to give me 2 weeks because I'm going to be gone.
So if I could, so the updates to the student and family handbooks, so, because that's, you know, so students may use electronic devices, including but not limited to phones, AirPods, and smartwatches. So these things were specifically mentioned. That's a change. Before and after school, during after-school activities, and at school-related functions, as long as they don't create distraction, disruption, or otherwise interfere. So that language has already been in the handbooks. So the handbooks are asking that we've included AirPods, smartwatches, because if you know, we say phones, and that's everything, but then it's like when you're getting into policy, it's like, well, what about my watch? That's not a phone. So, or AirPods aren't. So you have all these nuanced things that we'll never be able to keep up with, but this is our attempt. And then high school students are permitted, that's what we talked about, because that's what our policy says right now. So that they're allowed to use those in between classes and lunch breaks. And then devices are inaudible at all times, ringers silenced, except approved educational devices, you know, or any other time. So I'm just sharing what this is, so that if we vote no on this, then we'll have to remove that from, so there won't be anything, but we will still have a policy in place that permits these things. So, the board can vote how it does, and if the board would like to send, you know, to have a message, but I'm just pointing out that if you vote no, and I don't know if that's your intention, was to talk about it like we have, which has been great, then we won't be able to put anything in the handbook, but we still will have a policy that says these things.
We'll exclude certain things, which is the goal.
Right. So that's the reason why this is being recommended.
Okay, well, and thank you for pointing that out, because I got lost in my own discussion. I think it's important to be in the handbook, even if this isn't what I would like to see. I think it needs to go further, but I think something like this in the handbook, because parents and students will look at that before they fuffle through, you know, hundreds of pages of policy.
And I do have the policy up, so you can kind of see, you know, sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's all right. So I don't think I have trouble passing this, because this is better than nothing, and it lets people see it. It also didn't. I'm looking at National Honor Society. Might as well get on the right one. And it does have a link to the policy in there, which I think is very helpful, so then they can go to that. I'm just saying, I think I would like to see this go further. This is a good start. I'd like to see more research on this, so to go further. So I have no problem in passing this unless y'all have an objection to it, but I just want to see something more done with it.
And I think one more comment on this, Sue, is as part of the policy committee, I see this as one of those policies that there will be, I would like to say periodic review, but I think it's going to be more of constant review of it because of the evolving of devices.
It's so fluid. Plus, I think the policy needs to, I like the fact that you changed it from the acronym to the full word, and the policy is all acronym, and I think that should be changed to the full word.
It'll probably be outdated as soon as we vote on it.
Yep.
So, and to that end, I'm going to call to the question then.
Okay, no, it's fine.
On item 15.3.
That was a really good place to stop.
Yep. I'm getting better at this job. So, Mr. Dreer, roll call, please.
Ms. Rowland Miller,
Yes.
Ms. Larimer,
Yes.
Dr. Reffert,
Yes.
Ms. Minke,
Yes.
Mr. Bennington.
Yes, policy changes are approved. That takes us to, sorry, I lost my place. I believe we're at new business now. Is there any other board discussion on new business?
Just wanted to share back, speaking of Business Advisory Council, they met June 20th, and just continue to talk about the importance of the shift culturally, even down to 5th grade, of talking about careers, career exploration, not more about skills, those aptitudes, those abilities, those interests. And I'm just really thankful, continue to be thankful for that group and for the college, the career readiness person on staff. So the other thing I want to highlight, and on Sunday, class of 1962 Jim Leland will be inducted into the Hall of Fame in Cooperstown. So I just wanted to highlight that on Sunday. You can watch it, but I think a great day for Perrysburg there.
That is. Thank you for raising that. That's great. Okay, if there's nothing else,
Mr. Bennington, just quickly, I'm sorry I missed. Records Commission, which you and Dr. Reffert next month, 5:15, are we okay with that?
What are you doing before the next August regular meeting at 5:15?
What's the date? I'll make it work.
Whatever the board meeting date is.
You're just going to have to
15
remind me, but
minutes
yes,
early, that's all.
I'll make it work.
We have really no business, but we have to meet annually and to say that we have nothing to
19th,
update.
Right. Okay.
The 19th at 5:15.
All right.
And the other thing I just want to put on your radar, Capital Conference is coming, so stay tuned. We'll be looking for who plans to attend, and I'm working on dinner reservation, most important part.
Team building.
Okay, thank you for the evening. If there is nothing else, we stand, and no objection, we stand adjourned.
Objection.
Oh my gosh, could it be cold?